Hello everybody, my name is KirkpattieCake. I'm an author and robot, and today I'm sure you can recognize this wall that is behind me right now. But before we get into it, the March LBRY is currently accepting for submissions, so if you would like to join the Patty Wagon, send us your story that follows the prompt down in the description below, and next month we will be reading all of the works on this channel. I promise it's not about love this time. I see what happens when we ask for love, okay? So check it out, consider sending your work in, and be part of the community. Now, the other thing is, if you enjoy what I do on this channel, remember to like, share, subscribe, and it lets me know. Also comment, because that lets me know what is working for you guys, what you like hearing about, and just what's going on. So there's that. Now, this wall behind me, you probably recognize it. It's silly for me to even say this, but this is the writer's block. We all hit the wall at some point in our creative moments, and we can't get past it. There's no climbing over it. I can't climb over this. There's no punching it down. Look at these hands. Do they look like they can punch through a brick wall? No. Do I look like I can punch through a brick wall? No. No, I couldn't. And so instead, I have to figure out something else. You can go all over the internet to find different ways to deal with writer's block, but I'm going to share with you the things that usually work for me. That's all that I can do, and at the very end, I will give you the secret that pretty much solves 95% of my issues. My number one suggestion, if you are struggling with writer's block, is to stop editing yourself. So many people have this desire to edit as they write because they don't want to sound silly, they don't want the story to be bad, they read something, immediately critique it, and they start editing it, and that is a way to, one, slow yourself down, and two, well, the main thing is slow yourself down, but you're going to kill your creative momentum, because the editing brain and the fresh start writing brain are two different parts of the brain. You're not going to have super great momentum writing success if you keep stopping judging yourself and then writing, because you're also being super critical of yourself, and then you start feeling bad, and you don't want to feel bad, and you don't want to feel like you're just wasting your time. So let yourself, it doesn't matter if you think the words are cringe, it doesn't matter if you fill in a plot hole with some really weird thing, just let yourself write through the scene poorly and keep going. You can fix it in post. That is what revisions are for. That is what other readers are for. They can help you come up with ways to fix it, but there is no way to fix it if you don't even let yourself write poorly. Just stop editing. Another way to work through your writer's block is to set a routine, because if you get your body into a routine, then it starts expecting you to behave a certain way at a certain time. And so this includes setting a non-negotiable routine of at 6 o'clock in the morning, at 8 o'clock in the morning, at 9 o'clock at night, for an hour I will write. And you can do, 30-minute intervals, 10-minute intervals, hour-long intervals, multiple times a day. But if you set up a non-negotiable, I don't know why that word was gone, a non-negotiable routine of when you are required to write, or at least a writing limit. I don't necessarily do a routine of when I'm supposed to write, but I do better if I write first thing in the morning. I try to do a daily word count minimum that I'm required to do. So it doesn't matter when I write, as long as I hit that word count, and I don't always get it, but I did write over 40,000 words last month, so it happens. It helps. If you set a requirement for yourself, just figure out what works better for you. If it's a certain time during the day that you're more productive, if it's before you go to work, or before you go to school, or after you go to work, or after school, if it's late in the night, if it's early in the morning, if it's at lunch, or work on giving yourself a minimum word limit. You could even do both if that helps you. So then you know that you have to get 600 words in before you go to school or before you go to work. And then once you've hit that, you can feel pretty good about yourself. Then you can start incrementing it up. Whatever tickles you for setting a routine will help you, because it's the same thing with like exercising. It might be really, really hard to start exercising at first, but after about a week of regular exercise, after 2 weeks, I think it's after 3 weeks that your body has accepted a new habit. But it's the same thing with exercise, in that if you're starting a new exercise routine, you have to force yourself into that routine in order to solidify it in your body so that it feels weird when you don't do it. And if you get your body used to having to write every day, it'll make it easier to start writing. That's one of the things that the time limit, the set routine on time helps with writing, is that your body actually will start shifting into a gear that says it's ready for creativity around the time that you're supposed to be creative if you have a regular hour that you write at. So that's something to try. Going for a walk, I know it's always silly, but exercising, going for a walk, I've had so many ideas that came to me while I was exercising in one way or another. I have a short story called It's Not My Fault that came out, and I planned it while I was walking the dog at an old apartment complex after I ran into somebody when I was taking my dog out, and it was just not a good... It was an upsetting situation, and I just fumed for an hour as I walked around, fuming only so I can remember this idea that I wanted to write, came home, wrote it, and turned it into a story. Bleed More, Body More, which is the book that I just finished working on last week, the first draft, or last month, the first draft. I originally came up with the idea, or got the inspiration, from the phrase Catus Silvus, which is murder woods, and I didn't know what it was going to be. All I knew was I liked Catus Silvus, and I saw something about ghosts, and then I stuck it on my idea wall for a while, or my idea folder, and then sometime during the summer, I think it was July, August of last year, I was mowing the lawn, and as I was mowing the lawn, just listening to music, just all of the ideas started to roll in, because being active when I get brain blocked, or not even when I'm brain blocked, but just being active, getting hot, getting sweaty, can get the ideas going. So it might be worth a try to try different things, go out for a walk in a new place, find a trail, just do some yard work, whatever, just get the sweat going, get on some jams, and see if anything starts flowing. Now, this kind of ties in, the next one kind of ties into the first suggestion, which is to stop editing yourself. When you're in writer's block, do not stress yourself out about getting words down, or about getting the correct words down, or about this being a masterpiece. The thing about drafts and the thing about revisions is that nobody has to see it until you are ready to send it to other people. So you can write as poorly as you want, you can write as terribly cliche as you want, or as terribly knockoff-ish as you want, taking something that somebody else loves, or something that's really popular, or something that you love, and just completely ripping it off. But nobody has to see it or know that until, well, really ever, because you can write your first draft, you can revise it, and then suddenly it doesn't really look like that source material anymore. So stop stressing yourself out about, well, what if it's not good? What if it needs to be better? This dialogue is so cringy. People are gonna hate this. Stop. Which brings me to my next thing. If you're worried, one of the big stressors when it comes to writing is worrying about the reader, worrying about what the reader needs to know, if they know enough, if this makes enough sense, if you're talking too much, if there's not enough character interaction. There are so many different ways for a reader to interpret the writing that an author will often think about the reader as they're going. And if you are struggling with writer's block, stop thinking about the reader. Now, the reader is super important when you get to the point that you're revising it to be commercially viable. However, in the first draft, in the first revision, maybe even in the second revision, it all depends. Stop thinking about the reader. Stop thinking if the reader needs this information, if the reader needs this character. The first draft, in my opinion, the first draft is you being introduced to your characters in their natural habitat. Now, that first draft may not be accurate to how they will be portrayed in the end. If I go back to that in Drive, Clint, who is the southern driver, talks about making possum stew. He didn't used to be that southern. In the first draft of the book, and for a while after that, his name was Felix. And then after that, his name became Damon. And then after that, he became Clint. So his personality shifted with his name because, well, personality, in my experience, is heavily inspired by name, or when I'm creating a character. If the name doesn't fit, then the character is just screwed up and it messes me up until I figure out what their actual name is. And so Clint's character really started coming out after I figured out what his name was, and then I went through editing. So that goes back into stop thinking about your reader, think about the characters, be in the character moment, and don't worry about what the reader needs to know at that moment. You'll fix it when you get there. But if you were struggling with writing, the reader doesn't matter. So your first draft of your book, you might have done all of this planning, or maybe you are a super plotter, and so you've got all of this outlined, and you know where everything is going to be, and you know exactly when your characters are going to kiss. So you've pretty much written a 50,000 word outline, and you just have to put in the actual writing of the scenes. That's fine, but you still haven't actually seen your characters in their natural habitat making decisions within the confines of the book until you've written the first draft. And to add on to that, I don't think that you necessarily know the full extent of your characters until at least the first revision, because you learn so much about how they make decisions and about how they interact with one another on the page going through your first draft, that at least this is in my process, is I write the first draft. I learn a lot about how they make decisions, who needs to be involved, what their relationships actually are, and then I go back to do the first revision. I'm interjecting those relationships and decisions and personalities that I met as I went through the story for the first time. So in a first draft, and even in a first revision, even in a second revision, consider that for you to get to know your characters and how they work, and also the mechanics of that world, because it is the first time that you're necessarily seeing that world in action. Seeing it on paper in the plotting version is very, very different than seeing your characters actively interacting with it and actually actively interacting with other people who live in that circumstance. Another way to break writer's block, if you are stuck on a scene, is skip that scene, go to another scene, especially if you have a moment in your head that is much more vivid than the one that you're working on now. I want to say Dead End Drive. I definitely bounced around for that one. I did most of it, I think, chronologically, but there were times when I skipped, went ahead, wrote another scene, went back, wrote another scene, and this is again where you'll fix it in revision, because if you write a future scene and then you write an earlier scene and the points don't necessarily match up, you can go back and make sure that those points match up. Oh, I also did this in Creatures Lie Here, which is my second novel that I'm currently revising. Hopefully it's going better than the last time I tried to revise it. It was in revision for like 7 months last year before I gave up and just moved on to something else and said I'll come back to this later. But I skipped chapter 7, and I think I skipped another chapter and just bounced forward into where I thought the next chapter would start and finished the book. And then when I came back around to revise it the first time, I figured out what kind of content needed to be in that chapter in order to move the story forward. So you can skip chapters even in your first draft and just leave a note there to say something feels like it needs to go here. I have an idea of something that needs to go here, but you may not really know what those characters need to do until you get to the finale or you get further in the story and you see where the relationships are lacking and what content you need to add earlier on. Skipping the scene, totally legitimate. Coming back to the scene later, totally legitimate. Don't feel like you have to do everything in chronological order. Now, something that really, really helps me out in order to just even get work done, and I know people, and I know there are people that this won't work for, but it works for me, is I set a timer if I really, really want to get work done. I used to set a timer for 10 minutes. I've been setting a timer for 15 minutes instead, and during that 15 minutes, I'm not allowed to do anything but focus on the writing. And when I do that, I can usually get 500 to 720 words in, depending on whether it's a good day or not. And that helps me, one, compartmentalize the work, because if I tell myself I need 1,500 words that day, then I know that I can basically hit that in 30 minutes if I do a 15 and a 15, and so that's at least what I have to get in. If I need to get 3,000 words in and I get about 600 average per 15 minutes, then I just have to do 6 times 15, so about an hour and a half, and I can spread it throughout the day because 15 minutes is easy to slip in here and there and everywhere. So set a timer, be strict with yourself, and say during this timer run, all I'm allowed to do is all I'm allowed to do is write. I'm not even allowed to edit unless I accidentally really misspell something and I need to go back and fix it, but all I'm allowed to do is move forward, no major edits, just be pushing the story forward for 15 minutes, and when that 15 minutes is over, then you can go back and look over it and be like, should I be editing this? But again, I go back up to previous segments. The editing brain and the drafting brain are separate, and you need to get done with your draft before you can edit, or it's gonna take you forever. And you're gonna hate yourself, and then you're gonna be demotivated. So in theater, we're often trained time and pushing your story forward in the most organic way possible. I call this Meisner for writing, and I don't know if that's legitimate or not, but so I have a theater background, and in theater there is the Meisner method of acting, which centrally focuses on being in the moment and interacting with what's around you, making observations with what's around you. So in theater, I was trained that before you come on stage, you need to know where your character was before they entered the stage, and then where they're going after the end of that scene or after your moment on that scene, because it tells you stuff about that character's mindset, about where they're going, what they're doing, what their goals are in that scene, and it helps guide your actions, your emotions, your interactions with other people. So if you're having writer's block, this is going to be the most boiled down version of this ever. I might do a longer video on this process later, but I want you to think of a part in your story where either you think there's a plot hole, a really big plot hole, or you're really struggling to figure out what comes next. Okay, once you have that moment, I want you to think of what was that character doing before that part of the story happened, whether it is actually written into the story or it is just something that you have to cognizantly think of because they skipped. You know, maybe it's a time skip, maybe it's a POV shift, but know where that character was prior to where that scene started. What is the emotional state of that character based on the moment before that scene starts? Once you have that, I also want you to think of, why is this character in the scene right now? What is this character trying to accomplish? Because every character in every scene has a reason for being there. They have a goal. Now that goal might just be that they're bored and they're trying to entertain themselves. That goal might be that they were looking for $1 so that they could go and buy, you know, a snack bar from a vending machine. So they're looking anywhere that they can. Every character in every scene is comprised of somebody who is there for a reason. Maybe they're there because they're at work. Maybe they're there because they were grounded. That's why it's important to know how these characters got to where they are. And they also have tactics that they're predisposed to because of their personality, because of the physics or the rules of the universe that they're in, because of their economic rung. There are different things that are going to determine what your character can do to get a thing that they want. So if your character needs money and they're a prostitute, then they're going to have different options, going to different places and enter different places in order to make that happen, as opposed to if you were a 15-year-old boy and well, just in general, a 15-year-old boy, and you wanted to make money to go buy a video game. The first thing you think of is not necessarily going to be prostitution. Now, does that mean that a 15-year-old could not think of prostitution? No, but then that's a completely different type of character, and you have to think of where that character is coming from, where they're going, their desperation, and what skill set they have, or what things they're willing to do in order to get what it is they want. So, in short, in order to beat your plot hole or your writer's block in a moment, latch on to your main character of that scene, your narrator of that scene. Know why they're in that scene. What is it that they are trying to do? Are they trying to get from church to their house? Are they trying to find $1 for the vending machine? Are they trying to get away from the cops? Are they trying to escape jail? Think about what it is in their immediate vicinity that they need to do, that they want to do. And think about where they were just before that, how that affects their current mood, what they have on them, their abilities, their opportunities. Because if somebody is just trying to escape the police, well, somebody that is on the street that saw cops down the corner is going to have different options available, as opposed to if they are already in a jail cell and they're trying to figure out how to get out, right? So you have to think of how somebody got into a situation, what situation they are currently in, what it is they actually want, and what tactics they can and are willing to use in order to get to the next step. This is eventually how the entirety of Act 2 for my cargo mover ended up being escaping from jail, because the whole thing is you get arrested and then you get put in this facility. Well, now, in order to get out of the facility, there are all of these steps, like getting out of this building, avoiding those guards, going to find your vehicle. It doesn't happen immediately. You have to do step after step after step. And if you can't find the keys for your vehicle, then you have to go find the keys to get to the vehicle. And then what if this other guy tries to make a deal with you to stab that other guy in the back? You know, there are so many variables. And every time your character is going to make a decision, there's going to be the opportunity for any other character in that room to also have their own desires, their own goals, and maybe their goals are counter to your main character's goals, and that's where one conflict comes in. That's where the characters will interact, and that's when both characters will be using their tactics, their personalities, and their resources in order to resolve what it is that they want, whether it's killing that guy or just getting the hell out of the bedroom. So I know I just kind of ranted on that for a while. I hope it wasn't confusing. But keeping in mind that specific thing, the Meisner for writing, the what does your character want, where did they come from, and where are they going, will solve 95% of your plot holes and 95% of your writer's block, because you are actively moving your character toward a goal with only in mind what they have available at their disposal to get to that thing. It makes you consider exactly what that person has on them. Now, if all of a sudden they have a backpack that has a Gatling gun in it, well, now earlier in the story you have to figure out how the frick they got a Gatling gun. So that's one of the things that in revision you're going to go back and you go, okay, so they were in the spy academy and they put a Gatling gun in their bag and then this happened. So in doing it this way, you'll learn exactly what you need to set up earlier on in order to give your character what they need to get out of the situation in the future, which erases plot holes. Those are my tips for getting out of writer's block, and in a review is stop editing yourself, try a routine, get physical, and go exercise, make yourself sweat. Don't stress about writing the next masterpiece. Go to a different scene. Stop thinking about the reader and focus on your characters. Consider what it is you're struggling with and why you're struggling with it. Set a timer and then get into your character's head to figure out where they are going, where they're coming from, and what it is they want in their immediate vicinity. Those are my tips. If you have any other tips for getting out of writer's block or for facing writer's block, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what your tips are. Again, these are just what I use to get out of mine or to start thinking again. The best thing anyone else can do is adopt what works, try other things, and discard anything that doesn't work. Just know there is no one correct way to write and no one correct way to get through writer's block. If anybody tells you otherwise, they are wrong. So that's what I got for you today. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, share it, subscribe for more writing related content, and join me over on Minds and Gab if you like to, do the social media. And until next time, I think I've said and enough. Until next time, have a great weekend and don't die. Talk to you later. Dear Madam Astra, that's me. We regret to inform you that on August 1st, your employer, Agatha Jane Benedict, owner of the Benedict estate, peacefully passed away in her sleep. Oh, that's so sad. Wait. Let me try that again. Oh my goodness, that's so sad. Yeah, I think I'm ready. With millions of dollars on the line and the opportunity for your every need to be taken care of for life, tell me, is there anything more valuable than that? I didn't think so. Dead End Drive is a dark comedy novel that makes 3 promises. 1, an illustrious estate in Louisiana. 2, an opulent dinner affair for all in attendance. And 3, and most importantly of all, lots and lots of competitive murder. So if you're looking for a cozy book to settle in with for the spooky season, I've only got one question for you. Will I see you at the will reading?